Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Leighton from Zaloni, and presenting today will be Alexion and Zaloni on data governance best practices with a DataOps approach. I'm going to start with a brief overview of Zaloni, and then we'll move into the presentations. Zaloni helps customers realize the power of their data, whether that's conquering multi-cloud data sprawl challenges, ensuring data security and compliance, or creating new revenue streams from data assets. Zaloni's end-to-end DataOps platform, Arena, allows organizations to catalog, control, and consume their data on one platform. For more information about Zaloni, visit zaloni.com. While you're listening to the presentations today, feel free to submit questions in the Questions tab, and we will do a Q&A at the end of the session. Presenting in today's webinar is Venk Dakshin, the Senior Director of Enterprise Applications and Architecture for Alexion. Co-presenting is Ashwin Nayak, Zaloni's Vice President of Engineering. And without further ado, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Venk Dakshin from Alexion. Welcome, Venk.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share. Hi, everyone. I'm Venk Dakshin. I work for Alexion, a pharma company focused on developing life-changing therapies for people living with rare diseases. Let me explain the rare disease landscape with some interesting and telling data. There are over 7,000 known rare diseases. Only 5% of them have an approved treatment. There are also over 400 million people living with a rare disease. So a rare disease is not so rare as you may think. Rare diseases typically have low awareness and are hard to diagnose. 50% of the people affected by rare diseases are children. 3 in 10 children affected by rare diseases will not live to see their 5th birthday. So it's critical for us to support the rare disease awareness, as so many patients still need therapy. For any pharmaceutical company, data is critical to the mission of the company, serving patients, excellence in operations, as well as thrive in a competitive landscape. Data governance is the key for us to get greater value and insight across multiple data domains and data sources. A consistent operating model that enables collaboration across multiple business units. Clear enterprise-wide definitions, easy access to metadata, enterprise-wide policies that provide clear guidance on how to use data are critical to the success of data governance programs. Enterprise data governance enables us to move from a siloed functional strategy and tools to aligned enterprise data strategy based on collaboration and consistent tools. It really helps us treat data as an enterprise asset. Zaloni has been an important partner in this effort as we get an end-to-end data ops platform that includes data lake, data catalog, self-service data ingestion, ETL, as well as the data governance workflow. Rather than creating several point solutions that don't talk to each other, it's great to have a centralized data lake where we can quickly analyze and correlate data across functions to get deeper insight. There's also great opportunity to use data governance to break functional silos and enhance cross-functional collaborations for data leaders and practitioners across the company. An analyst or a data scientist from a pharma company typically spends 70% of the time navigating the organization's tribal knowledge to understand where the data is stored, understand the definitions of the data, massage the data to resolve conflicting definitions, figure out who owns the data, and then finally request for access to the data. The actual time to answer the pressing business questions is less than 30%. Our vision is that with streamlined data governance, we enable collaboration around data, where data can be easily accessed with a centralized data catalog, and that can be browsed by a data scientist or a data analyst across the organization to be easily view the metadata, understand the data definitions easily because they're consistent, and compliantly get access to the data. With all these activities streamlined, our data scientists will have more time to work on answering pressing business questions, rather than wasting time to navigate the organization, understand the siloed data, wrangle the disjointed data, and then finally find a central warehouse to store and join the multiple data sources to find meaning and insight from the data. In summary, data governance and data operations are key to break the functional silos and truly treat data as an enterprise asset. The slide here shows a typical data maturity journey that most organizations go through. We have identified 5 key phases of the journey. You typically start off with chaos, the first part. Having data in multiple warehouses, definitions that conflict with each other, that results in very low data quality. Due to this, it's extremely difficult to get good insight. We also have a siloed approach towards data projects with little or no cross-functional collaboration. The second phase is to start crawling by building a data foundation. Typically, this involves implementing a data lake with multiple zones to serve the needs of the various business units. From an analytics perspective, we start off with descriptive analytics and KPIs that identify what has happened, really backward-looking analytics. Next, we create a foundational master data strategy for key data domains, whether it's customer, product, things like that. But still, there is very limited collaboration within the business units, as there is no consistent operating model across the enterprise. The third phase is to start walking by establishing data governance. In parallel, we continue to support the various business needs. You typically decide the operating model for governance between centralized or distributed or a hybrid. We chose the hybrid data governance model, where the business units are empowered to make decisions within the function, and they escalate items where they need help from the enterprise group. Once you have the operating model created, it's a good opportunity to learn and streamline the operating model by piloting it out to a few key business units. The fourth phase is to start running by rolling out data governance across key data domains and functions. Really start maturing from doing descriptive analytics to getting into prescriptive and predictive analytics that answers the business questions. Having a solid data science team is critical for successfully making this transition. The fifth phase is to start flying by maturing from chaos, that's doing data, versus being data driven. This is when we consistently do a great job across the projects, answering several business questions that's important for the business. By leveraging AI, machine learning, as well as getting to prescriptive and predictive, really moving through the journey. And that's when we really embed data into our culture and be a truly data-driven organization. The maturity takes hard work, time, and consistent focus. It's not easy, but you reap the rewards of being on top of your data game. How does data governance act as an enabling force for the organization's data needs? First and foremost, we have the key metrics for the quality of critical data elements across the organization, starting from R&D to supply chain to sales and marketing. Once we have visibility to these metrics, we start a continuous improvement process to enhance the data quality with the right data owners and custodians. The metrics of key KPIs are the critical headlights we need to have a successful journey in data quality. Secondly, we use the data catalog that identifies the metadata for the critical data elements along with the definitions and data owners and stewards associated with that data. I call this the Google for business data. It really makes it data easy to find. Once we have the catalog established, we create an easy workflow process for data practitioners to compliantly request the appropriate governance lead for access to the data. This really makes it easy. Third, this collaboration and visibility to the data that we already own reduces costs by eliminating some of the siloed purchases that are done within a department or within a region. Data is an enterprise asset. We use it across the organization and share it in a compliant manner. Fourthly, data governance clearly establishes accountability. Data owners, stewards, custodians, and the roles and responsibilities are also clearly identified. This clarity speeds up the process of sharing a data, as well as clarify the path required to improve data quality. The last 2 points are very interrelated. Having compliance as a critical element of managing data is important. A robust data governance workflow and reporting will give visibility to who has access to what data across the company. If the nature of the data changes, we can easily go back and review who's using the data and for what purpose. Streamlined access to data as well as self-service data ingestion really enables us to make the transition from business intelligence backward-looking to advanced analytics, answering the more pressing needs of the business, answering questions. This really enables us to move up the chain and get more value from our data initiatives.
And thank you, Venk, very much. We enjoyed your perspective today. We're now going to transition into Ashwin Nayak, Zaloni's VP of Engineering. Welcome, Ashwin.
Thank you, Leighton. And hello everyone. And it's a pleasure to have all of you to participate in the webinar. And from Zaloni's perspective, I would like to share some of the things that we are experiencing with our customer base in terms of today's data challenges. And some of those challenges that we experience in every single customer, as well as broader industry, as we talk to our wider customer base, we are finding that this data silo is really, it exists, and it really is compounded by number of factors, such as for particularly some of the large organizations, they have some of the data warehouse or database on their on-premise, and some of their departments have created certain type of data ecosystem on the cloud, as well as the business team have gone ahead and created or signed up some of the point applications to solve some specific use case, such as for marketing, they have customer acquisition type of application sitting in completely in the silo. So when we look at all the different challenges that as we learn from the customer base, we are finding that having this complexity of data in multiple different places, different location, as well as the different types of application is starting to compound and creating a lot of those challenges for the large enterprises. And for those enterprises, they are also not having a consistent and enterprise-grade data governance tool to find a simple answer where the data is coming from, who owns it, what is the metadata behind it, how frequently that's refreshed, and where this data is being consumed is also that really is they're finding extremely challenging to answer those questions, which is something that's first and foremost is critical to drive the business, but they just cannot do it because of not having a centralized enterprise-grade data governance. And that really creates the business risk for them in terms of compliance as well as the security. And so that's a lot of organizations and our client base are taking that very, very seriously. And we'll talk about how Zaloni and we in an Arena platform that solves some of those problems. And also, when it comes to consistent data pipeline in applying certain business rules to transform or the data, and as well as creating a unified view of the data, that doesn't exist either, because it's siloed by a team or a particular business unit, and they must have created a ad hoc scripts to bring in the data to solve a point solution, but really haven't thought through the broader impact. And then the fourth category that we are seeing is the self-service data access. So earlier, most of the organization have spent resources and investment in implementing the tools such as the BI tools, analytics tools, and that has solved some problems and quite a few problems, so we would say. But what has not really given the flexibility is the agility to the business users, where business users can come into an application where they can search what they need and off of the trusted data, and then provide that self-service access to the business users, and the business user can use that and go ahead and use that data set for their application. Now, the self-service challenge has essentially gone to a more of a people-driven, which is the requests come to the IT team or a technical team, and that takes some time to fulfill it. But it's not really a self-serve request, where right now it takes few days or weeks to fulfill certain requests, whereas the business needs an answer right away at that hour. So how do we really minimize that the time from days and weeks to hours is the challenges that a lot of organizations face today. So those are all I'm sure there are other challenges, but we kind of group them into these four categories. Can we move to the next slide, please? Okay. When it comes to solving some of those challenges we talked about, we find a systematic way of a maturity model that we have developed at Zaloni over, working with several customers, industries, and we came up with this maturity model. Now, the maturity model is really defined where the organization is at and what type of tools and platform and the people and the processes are in place to look at the DataOps as a centralized strategic initiative for them to make a impactful decision. And when it comes to, as we onboard a customer, we work with them to see where they are in this journey and work with them to kind of transition to the as the next level. And we'll sort of talk about each of the steps of the maturity model, how you can look at it and implement within your organization to realize the business value. So the first one is coming from the left to right, the unmanaged. Unmanaged is the organization or the team has created a centralized or a location, whether it's in a cloud or on-premise, to bring in all the data. Let's just bring in all the data and we'll figure out what to do and how to do it as the next. That may be a good starting point, but that necessarily doesn't solve the DataOps problem. So having to create one centralized place of all the data coming that organization need, they bring in the data and have some sort of at least, provide certain type of ad hoc reporting to their business users. And again, that's driven by people, which is no one has a direct access. It's driven by the analyst and answering those questions through the queries or particular tool. Then that we get to the next level of maturity is the managed, which is they create a technical metadata, and technical metadata used to be a lot of organizations, they view that as a more of a data dictionary, where when you sort of start to document where the data is coming from, some level of the data type, as well as some description of the data set, which is a good starting point, and at least they recognize the value or the bringing where the data is coming from. So it reduces the data duplication because as another data set comes, for an example, if an organization has a CRM applications and where they capture all the customer data, they bring in the data. They know how this data needs to be merged or integrated with their existing customer data set they have. So that's a good thing. That's a good starting point for them to start managing some of those things. But the challenge with also it creates is very soon that technical metadata gets outdated if it's not done in a systematic within an application, but it's done in a spreadsheet or outside of an application, because business doesn't stop bringing in the data or the need to have the other applications, and people who are responsible for creating that type of data dictionary outside of an application they have to manually go into and update it, and very soon they realize it's outdated, and that also creates a problem. So what we find is kind of take to the next level of operationalized maturity model. This is the stage where what we are finding is providing a lot of reusable data pipelines, which is if we know that a customer data set is coming from a CRM application and how it needs to be merged, it's already been viewed, and how the customer data needs to be mapped into the existing customer data set in terms of the business rules and consolidating the customer IDs or the views, that's some level of those business rules can be implemented so that there is no duplication of the scripts or artifacts. So that's a next level of maturity. The other thing that we are finding, and we are noticing a lot of our customers leverage this, is called the CI/CD for the data governance resources, whether it's a data steward or the data analyst. And what this means is that it has evolved to this stage where they need to have a production data or subset of a production data, and they have that at their fingertip, and then they're working on a new data set, for an example, coming from a customer transaction data set coming from the call center, and they want to understand how this business rule can be applied. And now they have a copy of the existing production data, and they can make a change to an artifact or a workflow, apply that rule, test that rule right in that application, and then decide whether to accept it, and then submit that particular workflow for the production run. And then from that point onwards, that rule is now effective and going to be executed when that customer transaction data come into that production application. So the CI/CD concept, which used to be more of a process as well as in a technical pipeline for a product, like a DevOps type of role, now it has come as a front and center for data steward and data analyst as well, which has really helped creating or reducing the barrier of onboarding a data set as well as integrating a new application. Then we sort of talk about the govern. Govern is where the lot of corporate or organization governance can be applied in terms of data quality and profiling the data set and deriving the data quality off of the profile and masking, doing a token masking and removing the PII data so that users don't see them on the application. And that's for security and governance reason. That's extremely important for us for the organization as we view, and we work with a lot of pharmaceutical companies as well as the banking and financial services clients. That is a critical requirement for most of the clients that we work with. And then we go to the last step, is more augmented model, which is bringing the machine learning as within the fabric of the application of everything that's being done. For an example, if a new data set is coming in, there are machine learning model that's been built in within the product, within the platform, that classifies whether this is a social security, even though whether the column or attribute may not be called as a social security. It may be called completely different. But looking at a sample data set and applying the machine learning classification algorithm to say this could be a social security number is a critical thing, because so that can be now funnel into the workflow that do the masking of those attributes, and then bringing the trusted data to the for the analyst as well as data scientists, for them to create the data product as well as solving the business use case is the model that they're most of the organizations starting to embrace. So you may not have to start from a lot of organizations. A lot of them have some level of data governance. They start from maybe managed onwards, and some clients that we start with pretty much from the ground up. But it is to look into this one a holistic picture, and start with a place where you are to, we recommend organizations to look at this one holistically, so that they are not being surprised down the road. Okay, move to the next slide, please. Okay, the way we approach DataOps is what we call as a Zaloni EndZone governance, meaning we look at having a data set that's already the customers has centralized or put it into their different with a cloud provider or as well as the database. But how can we logically separate this data set without duplicating this data is the power what the platform provides, because no one likes the creating data duplication, but having a logical separation where each, what we call as a zone, each zone has its own function that says, okay, in the raw zone, we want to treat that as a source of truth of it's not changed. This is a copy of the data has come from all the different systems, and we want to use that to do the transformation or creating the governance rules and so on. And that is the zone that we tend to keep the data for small period of time, whether it's 30 days or 45 days, depending on the organizations, their governance rule, but it can be looked into sort of keeping the data for a certain period of time. And then as we move that into the next step in the data pipeline process, the trusted zone is where all the governance rules defined by the organization can be applied, whether each department will have their own project so that they are logically isolated. And within Arena platform, we provide a project-based data isolation that's so that the banking division of the consumer banking cannot look at the data from the commercial banking, and vice versa. And that's the right thing to do. Or if the organization has acquired another company, they're still in the middle of integration. They want to create two separate projects, but with the same Arena installation. So we create that level of project-based logical isolation, but also within each project provide a role-based access for certain the persona, where data engineers can look at the raw zone and do the transformation, but they cannot certify a data sort of how the data needs to be consumed. So between data engineer and the data steward, we create that type of role-based access, what they can do. I think that creating that trust is a critical factor for the organization, for all of you to look at that view. And then once that is defined, and that kind of gets to the next stage where the data can be augmented, meaning now data is available, it's going to be transformed for certain end user application, whether it's a sales application or marketing for customer 360 view or other data product applications. But also the data can be augmented by applying the third-party data set that can be merged into that final sort of data output to look at what is the trend, how we are going to compare a trend to the industry trend using the third-party data. Another use case that we are seeing here is the organization that their analytics team using the model and creating the output of the model, such as let's say propensity score and or a trust score. Those scoring as the models are scored and the output of the scoring process is integrated, and it's available within that refined zone, so that can be leveraged for other end user applications. So we look into this one as a defined logical zone, and those zones can be for each of our customers. They can sort of describe how each of their zone needs to be performed at the time of implementation. And once it is done, then the ongoing sort of processing that can follow those rules, and no one should or can change after that, because that's a critical factor here. And then the last one here is the analytics. One of the things that we are constantly finding is the self-service access we talked about, where the data steward can go into the application and provision the data to say, okay, I want to create a customer and the transaction output and the scoring model of each of the customer and their propensity score. Now that data they can search and using a global search within Arena, and then say, okay, I want to add that to my shopping cart, and the shopping cart now it's available, and the data is pushed into an endpoint, whether it's in a Snowflake or a Redshift or a Jupyter notebook, where the data scientists and other analytics use case can be fulfilled. So we look into this one in a holistic way of how we manage the governance, as well as how the data can be in multiple different places, but we bring that into a common interface to define what the data tells the story and how the data can be provisioned for end user application. Okay, moving to the next slide. So this is something that we want to walk you through how we view from a technical or the technology stack. When what we mean by the data unified data ops, all the data integration, ingestion, as well as catalog, everything we talked about, within Arena application, it comes with the 3 modules. So that's a catalog, control, and consume, and the platform can be installed on cloud platform as well as on-premise. We have the customer in both the categories. And as we look into the catalog module, this is the first sort of starting point for an engineer as well as data steward to define what the data inventory is, without even bringing the data into the product, because they connect to those data sets and start to define what those data sets mean, and including some of the technical metadata as well as the business metadata. Now, once that is defined, they go through the next steps of classifying what this data means, and then get to the next level of control, which is where the profile result and data profiling happens, and the profile based on the profile result, the data quality metrics are selected. Now, out of the box, we provide certain types of data quality that's statistical driven or categorical driven. And those data quality metrics now is available for the users to say, yeah, I need this metrics that is relevant because the data tells, the data profile results sort of provides that recommendation. And it can be one time, it can be, those data quality can be configured for on every time an input data changes or input data comes from the source application. And based on the data profile result, a certain downstream data pipeline can be triggered or can be moved into a bad data into a different zone where a data steward or a business user can look at it. So that's the decisioning that can be done within the workflow, within the journey workflow orchestration within Arena application. And then we bring that everything into a nice sort of data lineage view. So data lineage is really becoming a one point or centralized location for the organization to kind of search to say where this data comes from and what it does, where it connects to. I think that's having a good one place, a picture provides a lot of value to that. Then we sort of talked about the data marketplace, whether it's using their customers' first-party data, as well as we're starting to look at a lot of traction around the third-party data as well, and the self-servicing provisioning. We also sort of covered that. So that is how we look at from a customer or journey as the data comes into the Arena application, what can be done right away without bringing the data. And then as it gets to that next level of maturity, control and consume comes to the picture. So everything here, it essentially aligns to the vision of the DataOps maturity model we talked about a few minutes back. And a lot of sort of our customer base as we work with, the persona that that are becoming more and more relevant and use this application is the data steward as well as data analyst. Some organization, they have one group, but they're different role what they do, but also as well as the data engineer from the IT team. Okay, let's move to the next slide, please. Okay, so we also wanted to share with you what are the few areas that Zaloni works or helps and has an impact to our wider customer base. And one of the areas, there are, of course, a few different use cases, but we want to share with you some few impactful use case here. Unifying data is there. The having a data integration, whether you call that as ELT or ETL, whatever you define that, but just it's the bringing in the data through an API or real time or a batch data and loading that into a raw zone, and from raw zone and transforming that the data set into trusted as well as refined zone. It's that need to have that, and for each of that and underlying the data governance applied for each zone is a critical factor. And most of our clients, we are working with them to kind of unifying the data set. But once the data set is unified, and one of the things that we have solved this for several of our customers is the Customer 360, which is more of a marketing and sales use case, but also it is an organization initiative. Customer 360 or customer identity is a critical sort of a requirement for most of the organization as cookie sort of phasing out, and for media and entertainment clients, and they're looking to a way for them to, outside of how can they understand their customer on both anonymous customers that may have probably 70-80% of the media clients, whereas pharmaceutical as well as other clients may have 80-90% of defined customer data. So how can they bring that together, both online, offline, and mobile devices and so on? But also in the Customer 360, bringing in the third party data from such as LiveRamp, and the ecosystem is a critical factor here. So we have what we call as a data mastering classification algorithm that looks into this customer behavior and bring in this data from all the different places, and using that deterministic and probabilistic algorithm where customers can, or users can define what is the threshold they're comfortable with is a use case that we are solving. And the application is, there are many applications for that type of having a true customer identity. Okay. From a standardized governance is we start with some customer to say where Arena can come in and catalog my data, and then once that phase is done, bring in this data into creating that holistic unified data set. So getting that standard governance across the enterprises, and also within the enterprise, providing that governance within a business unit application is just another, pretty much every single of our customers are using that. And once the final data set is available, the data is governed, what we are seeing here is the new product, whether it's a product that's needed for a data product or a software product that our customers are defining to make sure that they are looking at their customer across the channel by providing the right information with the right channel, with the right offer, and also creating the software product within their website in terms of a data product is also the new revenue stream that we are supporting for some of our customers. And that is well and good for a lot of their own data that they have, but also bringing in the third-party data set that's widely available today through our partnership is becoming very, very relevant. And also we are helping the customers to tap into that customer data. There is no need to build another API to, let's say, S&P 500 data set or weather data, right? Because that data set is already available in the data marketplace and can be integrated within your first-party data set that the customers have. So bringing in that data marketplace access quickly with a few click of a button is becoming like a seamless experience to understand how to measure the data output relative to the third-party data, but also enhance and append your first-party data with the third-party data set to create that data products. Those are all the sort of use cases that we are solving for our customers. Okay. So this is something that at the final sort of stage, we are looking at how the DataOps really a strategic initiative for the organization. And if you do that right, what are the value that you'll get? It can be measured, it can be quantified, and that to justify the investment that you are going to make on the DataOps, which is something that's we help in our customers to make sure that's done in a more thoughtful way. Now, when we talk about the value of what the DataOps, it's necessarily that comes in the two ways. One is it not only creates a new revenue opportunities, whether it is through a data product, or it also can be done through savings, meaning there are different point tools that are available that are not integrated, but they're only solving one problem, but yet has created a massive governance security challenges for the organization. And so we solve that problem as well. So I think one of the things that, as long as you are thinking through where you are in your DataOps journey and what product and people that you are lining up and aligning to have a success in DataOps would be is a critical factor. by just having a product or a platform doesn't solve the problem, because you have to also think about people that are associated with this, understands the subject matter and understand your business and can make the right decision. But also providing the business user with a self-serve capability is a critical factor, because so that they're on the target to make an impact to their business, and having that self-service data access is critical. And standardization across the data set, business rule, governance, and all aspects of the compliance. Also having like all the compliance that we are going through, the GDPR or CCPA, and those things, making sure that the tool can address is also a critical factor here. At the end of the day, you should consider this as an efficient way of managing your data, managing your governance, managing your data access within the scope of the data set, and so that the analytics and other application-related use cases can be leveraged from that verifiable, trusted data set will be huge, is a critical to your success. And so that is something that we have been helping our a lot of our customers, and we are getting constant feedback, and we are happy to be in that space to help our customers. So that is something that what Zaloni offers, and happy to take on any question you may have.
Thank you, Ashwin, and thank you everybody for joining us today. We're now going to enter into a live Q&A session. So if you have not submitted, Venk and Ashwin, just let me know when you're ready, and I will end the presentation and go into live Q&A.
This is Venk. I'm ready.
And this is Ashwin. I'm ready as well. Can you hear me later?
Yes, I can hear you both. We can't see you yet, but that's okay. Just let me know. There we go. Hi, Ashwin.
Good afternoon.
Thank you all for the presentation. They were wonderful. To the audience, we only have a few questions that have been submitted so far, so please don't hesitate to enter your questions into the question panel. We're happy to address them here now. I am going to start off with these questions, and Venk, if you don't mind taking a first stab, and then Ashwin, you can follow. The first question is, how is DataOps different than MLOps?
Yeah, so DataOps is it covers a bigger area than machine learning ops, right? So I would say it's a bigger scope, and I'd love to get what Ashwin thinks about it as well.
Yeah, thank you, Venk. That is how we view it as well from Zaloni's standpoint, as well as how we are viewing the industry. So at a broader scope, DataOps covers MLOps, which includes providing the capability to bring in your own model and providing sort of the storing and managing the ML artifacts, the versioning of the model as they go through several iterations of the training and the underlying sort of data sets. And then once, as well as the goal, there may be many goals that associated with the MLOps, but sort of what is the one parameter that is that's going to really measure the success. So bringing the capabilities of storing and managing the artifacts, as well as the versioning of the model, it's and bringing that into the application, it's considered to be the part of the data. So that within one view, the customers or you can view where the data is coming from, how that's being managed, transformed, and which model that's being used, as well as which application the model is also feeding the data to. So having the end-to-end, the lineage of the entire ecosystem or entire pipeline is very important. It's all part of the DataOps capabilities. Leighton, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. And thank you both for your answers. The next question, realizing that governance is an overhead, what is a lightweight and agile approach to this challenge?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we always have to find the balance as we implement governance. So what we did is we implemented a hybrid model for governance because you can go very centralized where you drive all the decisions through one approach, one enterprise body, or you can go a very fragmented approach where there's not enough alignment within governance. We took I would say, a hybrid approach where we have a functional governance are empowered and enabled, where the decisions can be made within the functional area, and where they need help, they escalate up so that we can provide the coordination and alignment across the enterprise. So it's really you look at the value, right? It's around enterprise alignment and collaboration and sharing the data compliantly across the functions. There's significant value there, and it's probably, we thought was the right decision for us so that we don't get too centralized or too fragmented.
Thank you. A related question, what problems does Alexion solve with the tool?
So we solved several problems. The first problem I would say is, make it an enabling force towards sharing of data in a compliant manner. So a lot of times, we operate within silos, right? We know what we know within our function. So let's say if we know a data is available in a different function, getting that awareness through the data catalog is critical for us. One, we know what is there, and then the other piece is the definitions. We're working on aligning the definitions so that they don't conflict with each other, and they're overall, like, we can make one single source of truth for definitions, right? So again, it's a journey, identifying the definitions as well as stopping buying the functional purchases within, whether it's a part of a region or within a part of a function, right? So we actually buy a lot of same data and just in different slices over and over again. With this central visibility, our goal is to really ensure that we treat data as an enterprise asset, can be shared compliantly across the functions.
Thank you. The next question is rather long. I'm going to summarize. How do you deal with challenges when organizations refuse to implement this change and continue working in data silos? Does it just take time?
We were very lucky to have executive sponsorship. So our CIO, as well as the leader of data, Martin Leach, as well as our CTO, David Dill, were very overall great proponents of data governance as well as centralized data lake. Also, having a great team helps. So we have, Supriya, Aiden, and Sean McCarthy, people from my team who really enable this journey, because it actually takes a lot of time, one from an executive sponsorship perspective, and a team who can really drive this forward along with very strong change management.
Leighton, if I may add a couple of points also to Venk's input here. We are seeing this in a lot of our customers when they're starting a journey with the DataOps. One of the things that we are seeing is what is the value that this type of platform provides. But also, I think when we start, our recommendation is to what problem you are trying to solve, and not having a governance like a single definition of all your data assets. Are you, as a business, really compliance to the industry specific compliance that you are dealing with, as well as making sure that there is no data leak and how these data assets are being leveraged? So if you ask this from a security, compliance, as well as the data value chain, if and you are sitting with tons of data, then you really you can formulate that problem statement in a way that there is certain steps can be taken. Yes, it takes time for sure. And that's why a lot of our customers, they start with very small, like first of just understanding what data they have, cataloging it, I think, and creating a glossary. And at that point, it really provides them a visual way of all the data assets they have, which they could take the next steps, whether it's creating product or analytics opportunities. And then once they have viewed that, they sort of get to the next level. So yes, it takes time, but you really start with something small, show the value, and then get the stakeholders buy-in. And so it also comes with the approval of your the budget and so on.
Thank you both. All right, we are getting a lot of questions. One is, how is the application of DataOps different from traditional governance? And also how, a separate question, but how is DataOps, isn't DataOps and data management similar? So talking about the differences between DataOps, traditional data governance, and data management.
I can Ashwin, you want to take that?
Yeah, yes. So it's a very interesting question, how things have evolved over the last 2 decades or so. Traditionally, data management, it includes bringing in the data, creating some sort of data lake, and adding on some level of business rule through an tool to transform the data and then make the data available for the business use case. That has been more or less is what the data management covers. But when you look at also the data governance, it's kind of creating an active catalog, meaning creating a technical catalog or business glossary of the data. It doesn't touch on the orchestration aspect of the data. When we look at the DataOps, it kind of covers the broader area, which is the creating, first cataloging the data to provide the visibility of what data assets you have. Also takes care of data orchestration, including data management, data quality, and providing that the ability for the data steward as engineers a tool for them to create it. But also the data CI/CD, which is a component that's becoming more and more relevant, which is the data steward can come to the tool and apply a business rule off of a subset of production data and store that new business rule in a Git sort of fashion. And then from that point onwards, once that change is approved by the right stakeholders, then that new rule is start to take in effect in the production setting. And then bringing all this aspect of data quality, governance, glossary, and data management, these are all overall sort of component of the DataOps, so that you have one platform that are very well intertwined and connected, and having one centralized place for you to manage your entire data pipeline is what's considered as a DataOps.
All right, thank you. We probably have time for a couple more questions. I'm going to try to pick one. What are some of the possible automations suggested in the information governance that can be applied with DataOps?
Sure, I can take that. So from an automation standpoint, it starts with automation of all the different data endpoints that are available. So every once it's connected, cataloged every day, it has to, all the new data is coming in. Then that process of cataloging in a more automated way is then defining those, capturing those details. That is a sort of a very first step of the automation. And then the data pipeline automation of orchestrating the data, creating the transformation rule, and then if the similar data set is already available, not duplicating the data pipeline is also another aspect, so that you are
with a same type of data set, you're not creating or investing resources to create those type of data pipelines. So there is that level of automation on the workflow at the workflow level. And then on the consumption side, when the data is ready and it's transformed, it's trusted, it's approved, then provisioning the data and making sure that the endpoint is also being refreshed with the latest data set, so that whether it's the BI or ML use cases can be constantly looking at the most refreshed data. So the entire ecosystem of all the components that I mentioned about the DataOps, they are all candidates for the automation. And when we talk about platform, the automation is built in that, so that users don't have to think about should I automate it or not. But it's not the question about should I or not, but it's there. As soon as any of those features are enabled, they are part of the automation.
Wonderful, thank you. And for the final question that we'll do live, we will be able to respond to the rest of the questions after the session is over. But I would like to direct this one to Venk. And it is, what is the future vision of minimizing the gap in knowledge of treatments and diagnosing rare diseases with data correlation platforms within data governance compliant models? The mute, Venk, please.
Yeah, so I'm not necessarily authorized to talk through more specific use cases as it applies to Alexion. But in general, right, so the data governance as well as correlating data, whether it's external data or internal data, is actually very critical for typical pharmaceutical companies, and it's extremely, I would say, important competitive differentiator.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, and we are going to close. Again, if we weren't able to get to your question or you have other questions, please reach out to us and visit us on Zaloni.com. Don't forget to look through all of the attachments that are available in this platform. Thank you, Venk, and thank you, Ashwin. And we are going to close. Great job.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.